Good morning, everybody. How are you? I hope you are doing well. We have another Monday morning here with another live stream. Yay, I can hear myself. Sounds like audio is working today and sounding better than what it has in the past. I finally figured out all my problems. Well, not all my problems, but my audio problems. And today we're going to talk about shaping and hopefully some things maybe that haven't been discussed before. I know people tend to talk about the basics of how to shape, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some terminology things that are out there and what those mean to animal trainers. So I thought we'd kind of go down a different path. As you guys know, I kind of like I don't know, getting into topics that maybe aren't typically discussed in animal training, because I think it's kind of fun to expand our horizons and learn new things. So that's what we're doing here. So what is it that we do here? This is You Be the Behavior Consultant, a live stream I try to do every Monday if I possibly can at 11 Central Time here in Texas. And how does it work? I present a topic for discussion. We like to keep it interactive around here, so hopefully people share their experiences and their information. And I do have some videos to share with you this time around, and then we'll recap it all at the end and share what's new. And again, what are we talking about this week? We are talking about shaping and hopefully, well, not hopefully necessarily, but some terms here. We're going to talk about auto shaping, which might be a term that some trainers have not heard before. I'm going to touch on the topic of what is hand shaping, which, again, another term that may be new. Hey, Caitlin, good to see you here. And I'm sure we've got some of our other regulars as well, or at least I'm hoping we do. And then we're going to talk about free shaping, which is really a trainer term. This is a term that comes from the animal training community. And I do want to get into the details of this one, because I think this one does have a very specific meaning for animal trainers. And so I think that will be a fun one to discuss as well. So as always, I have a slide. Is hand shaping just luring? Ooh, yeah. Isn't that a great question? I know, because this is a weird term that probably a lot of us in the animal training community haven't really heard that terminology before. And it's not that it's such a big deal that we need to know this term. It's just really something of interest that I thought we might want to discuss. And so yeah, so we're going to get into what do these terms mean. And again, for me, as I've been going through my little journey in behavior analysis, especially with the graduate school, these terms have come up. Not the free shaping one from graduate school, because that's a trainer term. but it's fun exploring these things and seeing how it overlaps with our animal training world, and what can we glean from these terms, and what does it have to do with animal training. So anyway, I thought we'd get into these and see if any of them are familiar to anybody. And certainly you can talk about the ones that are familiar to you. If they're not familiar to you, no big deal. We'll get into it. And maybe share situations where maybe you've used one or any of these things, and maybe we can talk about what it all looks like to you, or what shaping means to you, or what you think of when you hear the words shaping in general. And we'll just try to get into it a little bit more. I don't know who else we have with us today. If we've got any of our regulars like Al or Annetta or Adrian or Soria, all of our regular folks who may want to pipe in here and give us your thoughts. I'm going to cough. Sorry, folks. There we go. So what are your thoughts? Any of these topics, feel free to comment on. Maybe probably the one that's most familiar to animal trainers is those words free shaping. And feel free to give me your thoughts. What is maybe we start with that one. What does free shaping mean to people? I know I have a very specific definition for that compared to what I tend to think of as just shaping. Anybody here have specific thoughts on that one at least? Oh, and yay, Annetta is here. Thank goodness. Any thoughts on that one? I don't know if you heard my question there, but some people, I know I have a specific definition for what I consider free shaping. And I think one way we can think about this is, we've talked about operationalizing things before, like operationalizing behavior. And so, and maybe that's not the right terminology for this, but when I think about maybe it's defining the procedure. When I think about free shaping as a procedure, perhaps maybe we can think of it that way. To me, it looks very different. It has very different criteria than maybe than other shaping procedures. Maybe that's a way I could put those into words, at least for me. Like if I'm going to train a specific behavior, and I were going to use free shaping, I have very I might select free shaping under very specific conditions compared to some other strategies. Chris here, Chris Shank, and I am not familiar with auto shaping. Maybe hand shaping is placed at the animal or object in position of the goal behavior. Free shaping is reinforcing movements of the animal towards the goal behavior. And Annetta says free shaping, no prompts, just to reinforce approximations. Yeah, and I would agree with both of you guys on that. I think free shaping to me really means that the no prompt thing is kind of a big thing to me when I think about free shaping, is that you're not really giving the animal a whole lot of information. You're sort of waiting for the animal to present those movements, and there's no prompts, or very little prompting, or no prompting whatsoever involved. There might be some other things that go into the free shaping process as well that I would consider part of that. And there's also, for me, certain conditions in which I consider free shaping something that I might choose as an option versus some other ways that I shape behavior, which we'll get into here when we talk about, quote, hand shaping. And auto shaping is one that I'm probably thinking that most people would not have had exposure to, but it's going to be interesting to talk about, because I think it provides some food for thought in our animal training community. There's some things that come out of it that are interesting, which is going to make it fun to talk about once we get there. And I may start with that in a bit. So gradual step approximation training. And I think that does come into play in two of our definitions here, in our hand shaping and free shaping. In auto shaping, what's really interesting is that successive approximations don't really occur. Isn't that exciting? How could that be? But we'll get into that in just a second here. They kind of successive approximations are something that can happen after auto shaping has occurred. And then we would probably say that we're moving into a different kind of shaping procedure, but that's not really what happens in auto shaping, which you think, what? How can that be? But it's kind of cool, which is what I thought was really interesting when I learned about auto shaping. So kind of cool. But we'll look at an example of auto shaping in a minute here, once we get into that definition. Yeah. So cool stuff. All right. Well, anybody have an example of a behavior that maybe they free shaped? Since we've talked a little bit about free shaping, or why they chose to free shape it, if they did, or if they have an example of a behavior they free shaped. And of course, we'll get into free shaping a little bit more here as we move along. But that might be fun to explore more. I know it takes people time to type after they've heard me say this. There's a delay as I say my words, and then I get to read what you've written. And that's always the fun part. Waiting to see what you're going to type. Ooh. People have to think about it. I know it takes some time to think. And even when I was thinking about the auto shaping stuff as we get into it, teaching a parrot to wave was something that you free shaped. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I'll have to think about that. Have to think about free shaping that behavior. That could be hard. I think I'm more likely to find a way to use some prompts to get that one trained in my past, the way that I've trained it in the past. But there's lots of ways. Okay, so Caitlin says, does free shaping include setting up the environment for success? That's a really good question. I think it can. I think we can include some antecedent architecture to help make that happen. And I would say that I do. And I'm going to show a video clip in which I do include setting up the environment. I free shaped my dog backing up onto a station, but used a narrow passageway to prevent my dog from turning around and using anything but his feet to back up. Yeah, I will say that I do include some antecedent architecture to make that happen. I free shaped a lot with my dog when he was a puppy to make him creative, but not for any particular behavior, says Annetta. Well, I'm glad you shared that example, because that's why I have my picture of which I call my house hippo here, Luther, because I am going to share a video clip of doing that creative stuff that we talked about in that one live stream about generativity, creating new behaviors. So I did include a video clip of teaching Luther to, quote, generate new behaviors. And it involved a little bit of a lot of what Caitlin just described there, of having objects set up in advance. So I did have some antecedent architecture there, so he'd be more likely to generate novel responses. And then I also was using the idea of creating new responses. So, that was sort of the behavior goal. Yeah. And then Chris gave the example of shaping a horse to step up on a station using free shaping. And Al says a dolphin bow jumping out of the water in a specific location. So he free shaped that behavior. Oh, those are all great examples. All right, great, you guys. All right, so I'm going to hang on to those thoughts, because we'll get to free shaping a little bit farther down in the hour here. But I thought we'll go ahead and get into what is auto shaping, just for getting into what is this idea of auto shaping something, because I think it's a really interesting thing. So auto shaping doesn't actually involve successive approximations at all, and there's some really cool articles about this. I have this one here that is really about errorless learning, when you compare auto shaping versus successive approximations, and with hand shaping, which we'll get into in a minute here. And then I also, for those of you that are part of the membership program, I'm going to have another journal article that I'm going to refer you to. That's sort of the first auto shaping paper with a key peck, which you're going to see in this video clip, and how it was auto shaped. And so the way auto shaping works is that there really isn't, it's basically auto is sort of for automatic, right? And what happens is we don't have to have a person involved there who's sort of, making a decision about, okay, I'm going to reinforce this action, and now I'm going to reinforce that action and this little approximation. What really happens is respondent conditioning in the beginning. So what happens is we are going to begin pairing a stimulus, such as a light being turned on, with some sort of other stimulus, like food being delivered. So in this example that I'm going to show you with this pigeon, is the light's going to be turned on and food is going to be delivered. And we don't care what the pigeon does. So the pigeon doesn't need to orient towards the light. It doesn't need to do anything towards the light. It just is going to be light is turned on and food is delivered. Light is turned on, food is delivered. Light is turned on, food is delivered. And what starts to happen is that the pigeon starts making this association that when the light goes on, food is delivered. And the pigeon starts to make that association. And what tends to happen is some sort of modal action pattern, some sort of behavior of orienting towards that light begins to happen. And it tends to be what we consider some kind of natural behavior that the animal will emit. And in the case of the pigeon, if it's food, it tends to be a pecking response. They also found if if it might be water that was getting delivered, it tends to be sort of a behavioral response that has to do with drinking. And they have video clips that kind of show that. So like when pigeons drink water, they tend to keep their eyes open, and they tend to do sort of a sucking response. Oh, shoot. Sorry. I didn't turn my phone on silent. Sorry about that. So what's kind of cool is that they show videos in slow motion that when a pigeon pecks, it closes its eyes and it kind of pecks a certain way. And if it's water that they were getting, they tend to keep their eyes open and they kind of peck a different way, and they sort of suck because they drink water in a sort of sucking motion, which is different from a lot of different birds. And so they'll do that sort of orientation towards the light. And in that moment, when the consequence is delivered after that action, it transitions to operant. And so it's really this respondent conditioning that happens first, and then it transitions to operant. And so this is considered auto-shaping, and it can happen independent of any human being involved. It, can be all automated with, machinery in a chamber. And so, as I was pointing out here in this one study, there's evidence with this auto shaping that it can produce less errors than the learning process that can happen when we do it with successive approximations. So it's a pretty interesting process, and I thought I can show you a video clip of what this looks like exactly, with this picture that you're seeing here with this pigeon. And there's no audio on this, so I can talk over it while we watch this video clip of it. And they've kind of, edited it so that you see time passing a little bit faster. But as you can see, the pigeon is not even oriented towards anything here. But at some point it's going to start making the connection that, hey, that light goes on and I get food. And so even though, at some point, it's not, it's not technically, and it's not technically meant to be an operant procedure. At some point there are approximations technically being reinforced there, right? Because that animal did look at it, and then food was delivered. So it's really but it starts out as respondent, and then it turns into an operant procedure, as you can see. So there you go. So it's going to start playing again there. So, okay, and I'm seeing some of your comments there. So some more things that were free-shaped. Retreating object with a giant panda was free-shaped. And then free-shaping a dog to a bed to position on it. Okay. Cool to watch the pigeon looking at the first light. Yeah, and can you give an example of how this can be used in the real world in animal training for a behavior? I know, and I was thinking about this, and because I was thinking about what you're saying there, Chris, myself, and I think really what I was starting to think about was what's called sign tracking, which is observed here. So sign tracking is, and I think this is where to me this becomes significant, because I think this is the kind of thing that we observe in our world, is that sign tracking describes the phenomena of the behavior of the animal orienting or presenting a species-specific behavior in response to the conditioned stimulus that has been associated with the unconditioned stimulus. So this is, why did that animal orient towards that thing? And this is what they call it, sign tracking. And like I said, the behavior seems to appear spontaneously, right? So why didn't they have to shape that pecking? All of a sudden the animal started responding to that signal. And usually, like I said, that behavioral response seems to be, kind of some kind of modal action pattern And remember, modal action patterns are behaviors that don't need to have prior learning history to be omitted from the animal. So they seem to have to be based in the natural history of the species, and they tend to appear after they've been associated with repeated presentations of that consequence, and that behavior that is omitted is related to the consequence. So, like I said, the pigeons peck, or if it was food, or they drink if it was water. And so I think this is significant for us in the animal training world, because I do think we see animals do things like this in our animal training. And I've had situations where, like an animal sort of, quote, spontaneously presents a behavior related towards an object that, is like, whoa, how did they figure that out so fast? When I didn't really go through the approximations. Like I've had a raven, like in one rep do quote retrieve, and it was like, whoa, how did they figure that out? But when again you go back to sort of the modal action patterns, and they got and so things like that come to mind for me, where it's really may have had to do with sign tracking. And then one of the things that sort of comes off of this is instinctive drift, which you may have heard of, where animals then start to become sort of obsessed with that object. Like we've seen the things with animals that have been taught to do retrieves, and then the object, they just become sort of obsessed with it, and they start doing behaviors that are all about that object, and that, like the raccoons that are, trying to wash the coin instead of put it in the bank, or the animal that's continually rooting. We do find similarities between sign tracking and superstitious behavior. So superstitious behavior is when a behavior that's not related to the behavior that's supposed to be reinforced gets reinforced. So I don't know that that's necessarily the same. I think that's maybe a little bit different. So I'm thinking that that might be a different definition, perhaps. So I think it does have implications for us that we would want to think about and consider. And then remember, instinctive drift is when it goes way off track, and so now the animal is just completely doing behaviors that take it far. And so like even like you'll see videos where animals, like people are desperately trying to reinforce the animal to like give up this conditioned reinforcer, so to speak, and they just won't even, they're like not even interested in that reinforcer whatsoever. So I think it's really interesting information, and you can really, again, if you want to look up videos on sign tracking, or journal articles on sign tracking or auto shaping, you'll find more information. So it's just really interesting information in my opinion. So again, it may not necessarily, and they've done even studies with pigeons. Like you saw that pigeon in kind of like a little tiny box, but if you look up the long box auto shaping, the pigeon will go all the way to the other end of the box to peck the light, and then go back to the other end to get the reinforcer too. So they kind of, they've done some other things with that as well. And with the rats, they do things with the lever, and how the animal engages with the lever versus, pecking something. So again, it kind of ties into natural history of the species. And again, we're thinking modal action patterns here. And like with a dog, it might be sniffing, towards something, or orienting its nose towards something. So again, really just stuff that I find interesting to explore and to look at. All right, so let me see, did I have something else to show you video wise on that? I don't think so. Okay, so let's talk about hand shaping. So hand shaping, this was like you'll see this term going all the way back to Thorndike. Well, I guess Skinner really used the term, but like they talk about hand shaping even with Thorndike, and his cats and all that kind of stuff. And so this is really where we talk about, like a person being involved in making the decisions as to when to reinforce behavior, and using successive approximations. And so I think for us, we just call this shaping. And again, for those of you in the program, I've got a nice paper that I to refer to, about, like when Skinner really starts talking about shaping. And I think for animal trainers, we also, think of shaping, or quote hand shaping, as the use of successive approximations, and and the use of, somehow like maybe a person is making those decisions, but for an animal trainer, this also is probably going to include using things like prompts, or maybe luring, or targets, or, maybe we're going to tap, or physical contact or something. There's more ways that we give animals information in our shaping process. And again, that antecedent architecture, we might be training more than one animal at a time, even in the shaping process. There might be a more specific, deliberate use of the bridging stimulus in the process, even though like in a laboratory setting, there are certainly other stimuli that are acting as signals that tell the animal that are predictors that reinforcers are coming. So, there are things that function as a bridging stimulus, but for us, we may, actively have a tool that says, this, we are telling you now that reinforcers are coming. So I think for us, there are all these things that go into play, whereas you may think of, like in an operant chamber. Well, and I should say, like, I'm going to show you a video clip of Skinner doing what he would describe as hand shaping, and I'll let you see what that looks like.
Just watch its behavior a bit. It's not doing anything in particular, you see, but I'm going to try to get it to do something. Suppose I shape up the behavior of making a complete turn. What I do is simply, as I did then, to wait for some part of that behavior. There's more of it, you see. Well, you can see the effect is instantaneous. I'm waiting for it to turn counterclockwise now. And then I reinforce that movement. And I wait for a more pronounced movement than that. It's got to be more than that. There we go, all the way around. Just watch it.
So that's what Skinner would describe as hand shaping. As you can see, he's physically there pushing the button saying, this is the approximation that I'm choosing to reinforce. And in some of the things that I've read, they described it as being outside the operant chamber, but there's also things that are inside the operant chamber that they could they could manually reinforce as well. And you can also, do some things where, even within the operant chamber, there are some decisions being made by the people involved. So I think for us, really, quote, the words hand shaping is really what we often describe as just shaping in animal training language. I wanted to show you another, and Annetta would call that free shaping. Yeah, interesting. Right. That's a really good point. You would call that free shaping. Good point. But I would say that to Skinner, they called that hand shaping. Good point. That's a really good point. So I'm going to show you a video of my rabbit that I trained to do a behavior. And we're going to get into free shaping though in just a minute, but I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there is sort of a thing with our terminology as trainers and sort of this training and the thing of quote hand shaping quote and shaping, and this word shaping in general, because I do think in our animal training community we have this distinction of free shaping versus just shaping. I want to show you this video of my rabbit doing a behavior, and I think I'll just let it play while we talk. So like here's this behavior of my rabbit going through cones, and and you guys are agreeing on the Skinner video. And this is, it's got a very funny little blip in it. I'm sorry that it's going to repeat like that when it's going to flash at you when it repeats. But well, maybe I'll stop after a few repeats here. But after when you see that video there, I want you to maybe think about how I trained that behavior, because I will say I certainly did not free shape that behavior. And maybe you can think about, how I trained that behavior, because that to me would be a very, very difficult behavior to train with what we would describe as free shaping. And then maybe we'll get into what most people describe as free shaping in the animal training community. So I may stop playing it because that is a very annoying flash at people. But any thoughts on how I might have trained that behavior? And then I'm going to go back to a slide because that is an annoying flash. Any thoughts? Because that flash is yucky. Okay, so Annetta says, I think you started having the cones in 2 rows and then move them closer and closer together. Dang, you're smart, girl. Yeah, I did. I actually started by having 2 rows of cones that were apart. And so she basically had to run through the middle. Yeah, two rows parallel next to each other. That is exactly what I did. And, she knows to come to me. She also knows to follow a target. And, and by moving the cones. Yeah, so instead of, and so it was easier to do that, so having the cones this way. And then if I can gradually bring them this way, and so that, then it, just by the way I space them. And then I can also I'm going to kind of do this, put them in position so that she is basically running between 2 cones. And then if I gradually bring the cones closer and closer together this way, right? So if the cones are apart like this, and I bring them closer and closer and closer, so every time she's running between 2 cones, and so if she were to run around them, then no reinforcers are offered. But if she runs in between them, then she gets reinforcers. So by doing that, by basically just changing the environment, I am able to create a situation, and I can use a target to get her to go through. But I didn't do the thing of making her go, using a target and leading her through the cones. It was more about having cones separated and bringing them closer and closer, and she has to run in between those. And so I didn't free shape that. That would have been like really impossible to get that behavior by free shaping it, in my opinion. And so this is what I mean by, we do have a specific definition. The cones was not in a straight line. That gave you your training strategy right away. Yeah. I gave it away in my video. Yeah, but maybe it did, huh? Yeah, I guess it did in my video. But yeah, so I think, I think when we think about us as animal trainers, we try to do some things that set our animals up for success in different ways than just by using this, quote, what we think of as free shaping as a strategy. So let's look at what might be a definition for free shaping. So for me, what I think of when I think of free shaping, I think there's little to no prompting provided by the trainer. And this goes back to what Caitlin was saying, that sometimes the environment is arranged in advance to facilitate desired responses. And I think both Chris and Annetta said that the trainer waits for the animal to offer behavior. I would say that generally a bridging stimulus is used to let the animal know that whatever behavior they just presented was what's going to result in desired consequences. Often the trainer is reinforcing really small approximations to keep the animal participating and to avoid creating frustration. And I would say, in my experience, I'm usually only training one animal at a time, whereas in other situations, I might be able to work with a group of animals. And I find that this term is really specific to the animal training community. I don't believe that free shaping is something that has ever appeared in behavior science, to my knowledge. I think this is one that we use as animal trainers, and it means a very specific shaping process. And you guys can help elaborate on that if that's what you've experienced or not. And it means very much this. It's very different than like what I described with the, maybe with the rabbit, or, with some of these other processes that we use for getting an action started that we can reinforce. So, and I use it under very specific conditions. And I think one of them was shared already. So for me, I tend to use it primarily when other tools are less available to me. So like when luring or prompting or targets will not be helpful or maybe even possible to use. And the other times that I use it is if I want to encourage an animal to be sort of more proactive in, quote, solving the problem. And when you think about it, for me, when we're training a behavior, it often is about kind of figuring out something. It's like solving a problem. So I'm basically reinforcing for actively offering behaviors frequently. I want to teach the animal to, offer stuff, figure it out. And so I don't know, maybe you guys have some other situations that you can think of, but those were the two main ones I could think of. And maybe you'll have some other examples as I share some video clips here that you can think of. But in my experience, I'm going to give you two, or I guess three examples. The first one for me that's pretty frequent is like when I'm working with larger animals where it's really difficult to have tools that can help us just because of the situation. So a common one is when we're training giraffes to swing their hips towards the fence line so we can have access to certain body parts. And so this is training giraffes to lean in. And so what we do when we're training that behavior is we're basically looking at the back hooves, and often leaning, shifting in weight, and we're trying to get the animal to move the back hips, the back hooves, to get the whole back end moving towards the fence line. So I'm going to show you two different giraffes. The first one is a female just beginning this behavior, and then a male who's sort of in the middle of the process, and then the male once he's fully understanding the behavior. Yes. Yes. Ooh, that's exciting. Yes. Oh, yay. All right, and I see that some more comments. We have getting animals to pick up stuff. Free shaping teaches the animal to be an active learner and not a follower, from Al. And Annetta says, I've seen you do it when training a giraffe to present hoofs. And that is the next clip I have for you, is showing you how we use that to get some giraffes to put their feet on the block. And part of this, I remember regretting this so badly that for some reason I think I had the microphone turned off on the camera, and so I didn't get the audio where you could hear us blowing the whistle and getting so excited to get the foot on the block the first time. This giraffe, I should explain, had, when it was a young giraffe, it had been attacked by a kudu, I think it was. And so it never carried its weight evenly. And so you'll see it had a very overgrown hoof. And so this team really wanted to begin the work on voluntary hoof care. And so very quickly we were able to get this animal putting its hoof on a block. I think the first session we got it on the block and we were so excited. And you will see we do a little strategic placement of the person with the bucket of food, which does help with getting this. And so Chris says the trainer's feeding position is helpful in positioning the giraffe as well. So exactly, yeah, you got it. So you'll see that in this video clip. So let's take a look at that. So part of it has audio, part of it does not. Here we go.
I like these a bit better because you can just have this with me.
Mm-hmm. It's a bad position, huh? Get in the right spot. Now we're looking better, huh? Yeah. We just had to find something that works.
So it is auto finding that kind of one food item.
That's good. There we go. I would keep feeding even though it's not on their grate. It still counts. So this is the part that doesn't have audio, and this was actually the very first session, which was pretty amazing. But this animal put his hoof on there in the very first session, and this was like the first time. Well, and Chris is asking if we had a bigger platform. This was our very first session. We were just scrambling to find anything that we could use, and this team. This was a few years ago. This team has gone on to do so much great work with their giraffes and hoof care. And if you guys are on the Facebook group with the giraffe training and enrichment stuff, I'm going to go back to the slide here. They've posted so many videos now of all the work they're doing on hoof care with their giraffes, and they've built a really great block and everything, customized block so that they can do hoof curls and everything. And so they've gone on to do amazing stuff with their giraffes and their foot care. So I'm really excited for them. So you can go see a bunch of their work. That's at Fota Wildlife Park in Cork in Ireland. So they've progressed tremendously since that very first time. So literally we just grabbed a block that we found, in the park somewhere. So now everything's all customized and beautiful and fantastic. And they're doing soaks and trims and curls and everything you can imagine. So they've really progressed tremendously. Let me see some of your other comments. Free shaped station behavior with a puffin. Targeting and prompting just didn't work as she was cueing in on other things and did not station. Once I switched tactics, she picked it up very fast, says Melissa. And Chris is saying she has seen the clips of what they've gone on to do with Fota, it sounds like. So awesome. I love it. All right. So I am going to share teaching my dog Luther to basically give me new behavior. So this is kind of ties in with Al was saying, was teaching the animal to be an active learner. And I was just doing this for fun after we were talking about our generativity live stream. And what I was trying to teach him to do was just give me new behavior, anything different. And so I've put out a bunch of props, and some of them he had reinforcement history with, like, you know, pick up a rubber ducky or put your nose or your paw on a target. And obviously he knows how to sit. And so basically what I was reinforcing is, just give me a behavior that you know is different from what you gave me last time. And so as long as it wasn't something he just did, I would reinforce it so that he was learning a new behavior. Just give me a new behavior. It may be a behavior that he's done in the past, and just to encourage new responses. And I also have different objects in there so that, you know, it might be a stimulus that triggers the idea of generating a new behavior. I do apologize. You will hear my macaw in the background initially vocalizing. She's outside in the aviary, and I think she was saying, that was her basically saying, hey man, I'm out here by myself. How about you guys come hang out in the backyard? Which I'm not responding to because I don't want to reinforce that behavior, and eventually it does extinguish. But unfortunately, it's a little distracting at first. All right, so here is Luther doing some creative behaviors, and you'll notice that I'm trying to be you know, not giving him any information, and being a dog that he is looking at my face for information, which I'm trying to just not do anything. I'm not trying to look at objects. I'm not trying to prompt him to do anything. I'm just waiting for him to give me responses. No, I know you did that one already. Oh, we're touching it. You did that. Not new. You did that one. We did that one. You did that one. You did that one. Yeah. Extinguish that. Yes, we did that one. There you go. Good. What else is out there? It was an accident, but it counts. I'll give you that. Okay. What's good to do? I'll give you that. I'll give you that. It's new. That's new. Oh, I hit you in the face. It's different. You hit it with your paw, that's different. That's a different behavior. You touched my shoe, okay. There's your nose. just did that. It's down here. So let's get into some of your comments there. So Chris says you never have to apologize for macaw sounds. And Caitlin commented on, oh my God, those are the smallest orange cones I've ever seen. So cute. So I'll tell you where I got those. So I go to kids toys, toy stores or toy departments to look for enrichment items for my parrots, and I found a agility course for kids to play with that came with like a little stuffed dog, and so you could practice teaching your dog to run the agility course, and that's where the little cones came from, so that you could have your little stuffed puppy run through the agility cones. And so I was going to do something with my parrots, some training thing, but I never used them, so I just still have them. And Chris asks, can this turn into a frustrating session for animals? So absolutely. This is one of the things we talk about with free shaping, is that it's important for the trainer to reinforce small approximations to keep the animal participating and to avoid creating frustration. So you may have noticed some of my things that I reinforced were not even what I would consider, a quote behavior, like he accidentally stepped on something, he sniffed something, he oriented his nose towards something. Those were all things that I wouldn't consider quote a new behavior, but in terms of like, he knows how to pick up something, he knows how to target towards something, he knows how to put his paw on something. But I accepted those just because I was like, you know what, I don't want to push it until he gives me something else. When he did the sit behavior, I waited him out because I know he can sit for a long time, because that's a behavior that, he has long, strong reinforcement history. That one I was like, yeah, I'm going to wait for him to give up on that. I'm going to really wait for that behavior to extinguish until he offers something else, just because he's got long, strong reinforcement history for that. Al pointed out that he's actively looking at me for direction. And that's simply because, that's something that's got strong reinforcement history in general. When we think about when I take my dog for a walk every day, he's constantly looking at me for information as to, where are we going next? And that gets reinforced. This whole generativity thing, we don't do that frequently. But basically when he would look at me, I just kind of, didn't do anything. I just kind of waited him out. I love his high fives. And that's not a behavior that I've really done with him before. I haven't actively taught him that. I have taught him to touch things with his paw. So he does know to touch objects with his paw. He offered it. So that was really a new behavior in that session. So I liked it and reinforced it. And Christina says several facilities have innovate as a cue for free shaping. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. That's fun. I like that. That's a cool idea. And Melissa says we do with seals and polar bears. Nice. I like it. And Annetta says, yes, we have had that with our seals years ago. I think it's quite common in marine mammal facilities. And Annetta Peterson is asking Al if they have done that as well. Yeah, so, you guys may have recalled we did the live stream on generativity, which is all about how do you teach animals that to be creative. And so that's pretty much why I did that session there, kind of inspired by that live stream. You guys can go back and check that one out. There's a lot of science behind that, and how do you make it more likely to create a situation in which animals will be creative. How do you do that? And one of those suggestions from that is to have a lot of stimuli in the environment, which is also good for people too, by the way. And we talked about the whole stuff from Dr. Robert Epstein and Skinner that go into all that. So that's a great live stream if you haven't checked that one out. Lots of inspirational stuff there. And so that's kind of what I was using there to have that little session there. So so it gives you some great suggestions on how to do that in a way that hopefully doesn't create frustration and also generates new behaviors. So that's what was going on there. So great stuff, you guys. All right. Okay, so I think look at that, we're right at almost at the top of the hour. So just to recap here, so auto shaping is something not usually discussed in the animal training world, but something to keep in mind when it comes to animal training. Several important things to note. I think the studies on errorless learning are kind of cool, and like I said, that reference will be there in the animaltrainingfundamentals.com for those of you interested in that. I think sign tracking is also a really interesting phenomenon that has been observed with auto shaping and how it can impact training in both ways that might be desired and undesired. And it is a reminder of the role that respondent conditioning plays even as we are making a transition to operant learning procedures. Hand shaping, the terminology applies to pretty much all of our shaping procedures. We may want to operationalize this ourselves to have a detailed definition as to what hand shaping looks like in the animal training community. To be honest, it generally involves many different elements to get reinforceable action for us. This is all the, the prompting, the luring, the antecedent architecture, all that fun stuff. Free shaping, I think for us as animal trainers, is a very specific type of shaping process that has been identified by the animal training community. A key feature seems to be the lack of prompting provided to the animal and the use of the bridging stimulus to provide precise communication. Additional features include teaching animals to offer behavior frequently and reinforcing these super small approximations. Overall, these three terms, when operationalized, mean kind of different things, I think, in our world and look quite different. It would be helpful to animal trainers to continue discussions on these topics and their details to fully realize their applications and benefits to animal training. So I hope that was kind of an interesting discussion. It may not, totally change your whole world and how you do things, but I think it's just interesting stuff as I like our discussions here to be how do I say it? Kind of a deeper dive and a little bit more exploratory into these things, and kind of open our minds to some things, because I don't know. I think it's more complex sometimes. It's not just one thing. I don't know. And we got our friends Sean and Masa here. Thanks for today's topic. This topic also highlights the learning experience of the animals. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for commenting. I appreciate having you guys here. I don't know, because I go back to, even though people can just say shaping is shaping is shaping, I mean, I think there's details, I think that's one of the things that we as animal trainers are really, we are like specialists at this. This is what we really break it down into all these little nuanced details. And I think that's what makes us so effective at what we do, is that we really get into these details and, we've accomplished some really amazing stuff by being very detailed about it. Yes, interesting and always enlightening stuff. Yes, we've learned a lot about what the animals we're interested in, or what they are physically capable of, and something we might want to train with them by observing the activities of the animals. We get so clever from all your teaching of us on Monday. Thank you for doing this. I agree. I feel like free shaping is almost a more specialized thing. It takes a sharp eye to do it well. Yes, I think so too. Yeah. And we think about so many details. I don't know. Yeah, that's my thoughts. Speaking of shaping and so many freaking details, I wanted to remind you all, Annetta Peterson and I put together this course on training for intranasal and oral swabs to test for COVID-19. And the reason this came up is, I don't know about you all, but I've been noticing that there's been a few more cases of different species being diagnosed with COVID-19 in collections lately. And I wanted to point out out that you really can train animals to voluntarily participate in intranasal and oral swabs to collect samples for testing for the virus. And you know, I recently went on the CDC site to see, you know, what is the preferred sample, and it still is the nasal and oral swab seems to be the preferred sample to test. And so, you know, you really can get that voluntary sample, and we've got some great examples to demonstrate how to do this, and lots of information in that course. And all you have to do is go to that link there, and you can take that course for free. So I did want to make sure you guys were still aware that that is available. The other thing I wanted to share is that I recently got together with 3 of the other authors of our behavior intervention guidelines for animals. And we did an hour discussion about what inspired the creation, what are some of the specific details about the guidelines, how it started, how to use the guidelines, some real life examples, and some more resources for continued learning. So if you go to animalbehaviораssociates.com and you go to a discussion of Big for Animals, you can listen to that for free. That is another free resource out there. And then also, both Annetta and I are speaking this week at the Animal Behavior and Training Working Group Conference for BIAZA, the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And there's other speakers as well. I'm doing an updated presentation on the constructional approach to addressing fear responses and aggressive behavior in exotic animals. I'm very excited about my updated version of this. Added a lot of stuff to it. So I'm really excited to share that with you. It's really affordable. So if you guys are able to attend that, I highly recommend it. And just an update on what's happening with my situation. I might just read this because when I wrote this, it just felt really nice. You know, we've had some really beautiful days here in Texas. I know Al can attest to that. And it just it oddly enough really reminded me just how fortunate I am. Something really important and amazing that has resulted from all of this craziness is that a group of people have gotten together with shared experiences. We found each other, and we're now building a community and support for each other. And this has been incredibly invaluable to me, and it's now giving a voice to all these other people as well. So if you identify with this community and if you're in need of support, please feel free to contact me privately. Today, my legal team is preparing to submit for the next step in this legal process, and I hope to have an official update to share with you this week. So that is where we are with this. And finally, tomorrow is a Tower Talk. Members, you are welcome to join us 11 o'clock Texas time tomorrow. And if you're not a member, remember you can still join. We're still doing the discount. We're still in a pandemic, unfortunately. Animaltrainingfundamentals.com. Just choose a membership option and enter the code sunglasses. All right, guys, here we are. We made it 12:04, and again, Caitlin says thanks that she's happy she got to participate again, and Al really likes free shaping and great teaching for active learners. Oh, and Dr. Cynthia says thanks for the COVID sampling course. Can I pass your link to the Veterinary Behavior Oregon, perhaps at AVMA? Absolutely. We want everybody to be able to take that course, so that's why it was made available. So for sure, please share that. We would love more people to take advantage of it. So yes. And Melissa says thank you so much. I learned so much, and it inspires me every time. Yay. Well, I'm glad you guys have been joining me on these Mondays. I really should and Annetta says yes as well. Yes, Annetta was instrumental in this course as well. All the people from Copenhagen Zoo did so much training. We've even got a giraffe in there that's letting us take a sample, and you'll see panda with the sample there. We've got sea lions allowing sampling, tiger sampling, very important, of course. So yes, we really want you to take that course. Yes, of course, you're welcome, Cynthia. Let's see, next week, am I still here in town? Yes, I'm still here next week. So the Monday after that, I won't be, but this next Monday I will be here, so we should be able to do another live stream. All right, guys, thank you so much for sticking around and enjoying another one of these, and I will look forward to catching up with you again. And I think that's it for this one. All right, guys, I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.